All right, what we're going to do is we're going to paint our Ferrari doghouse here. Now I'm going to be using this dust filter because we're not going to have much overspray, and it's going to be effective enough to get the particulate out of the air from the craft paint. Again, I want to let you guys know, those of you that have just tuned into this, it's craft paint that I'm using. It is not automotive paint, so it's safe to use. And Ken, can you understand what I'm saying? Okay, Ken's got good audio. I'll slow down and speak up a little bit. So basically, pretend we're at the Mustang, and this is the doghouse that I'm pushing and pulling across. So, using my lower down, my rocker panel position, I'm coming across. Why am I not stopping for the wheel opening? The same reason you don't stop on your panel gaps. You want the paint to be even. You got to visualize your vehicle like a box. So, don't get fooled into your body style lines. Your body style lines will get you in trouble. These swoopy cars with big curvatures and giant gullies and stuff like that, treat it like a refrigerator. The paint will go where it needs to go. And you can come back later and dust some paint in if you got dry spray, but for the most part, you'll be surprised where your pneumatic spray equipment can put that paint and put it effectively. You see what I'm doing there? You see my body position? I've broken my knees, my hips are low. It's like a karate stance. If you've ever studied martial arts, it's like a horse. Oh, my thing is goofy. But it's like a martial arts stance. You're at the ready at all times. And I'm able to do this. And that keeps my gun. I don't have to move my hand almost. And it lets me look at the subject. I get to the middle, I'm out of room, I'm uncomfortable. So I'm going around and walk through the doors and come back here. Pick up my wet edge, pull it across, because I've just pushed it up to the middle. Now I'm pulling. So we've got a nice even coat. We're coming down here. Look at my wrist position. My hand just fell into there. It's not because I'm brilliant, it's because the muscle memory serves me and my hand remembers what to do. Okay, now it's uncomfortable. Prone position. Gun never moved. Gun's parallel. If I've had conversations with a lot of different people about these techniques. Now, a lot of people want to come around here and do the inside of their jam first and then come back. Well, look what happened. Now I've got a coat of paint there. So when I do my jam first, when I do my edges first, yes, I get coverage up in there, but I've also got overspray all over the rest of that panel. So now I'm still on coat 1. So now when I come back, and I pick up the rest of that wet edge, guess what I've got? I've got 2 coats on there, on an edge that has surface tension that's prone to run. So if I don't do that, if I treat it like a refrigerator, then I've only got 1 coat on everything. And if I have to, I can come up in there and use a little bit of less air pressure and dust up in those dry areas, which is important to note that you got to be able to see what you're doing. So get up close, which means you got to have safety equipment on. You got to have eye protection. You got to have protection for your respiratory system. So don't be a knucklehead. Dress up for safety. And we'll talk about some safety gear in a little bit. So what I'm saying is treat it like a box. Make sure you don't overcoat or double stack, because by the time you do 3 coats of base and 3 coats of clear, if you got a sealer, you got 5 coats. So double that. So you got you got about 8 coats of material on the rest of the vehicle. But right here, you've got 16 coats of material on your wheel opening. You don't want to do that. So that's my resolution, or that's my justification for not doing your inside edges first. So treat it like a box. And there's no overspray with this gun. It's a nice HVLP gun, so I'm going to finish this coat without the dust mask on. So there we go. So that's a coat of paint on the doghouse. Now, it looks tiger striped. It's craft paint soaking into cardboard. If this was automotive, it's slick, it's slippery. So, you know, I'm not worried about that technique. And typically paint needs layers. We've got time. I'm going to do one more little tip on gun setup. If you're watching and if you've painted before, you'll notice that I was pretty darn close to that surface. Now, typically, you know, that's a pretty good gauge. What I like to do is come in a little tighter and move fast. So I want my gun distance about 4 inches from the surface. Why do I say 4 inches? Why that close? Well, I got to move fast. Here's an interesting thing. I call this the wall of air test. Okay, that's trigger fully depressed. Listen. You hear that? The sound changes. Did you hear that sound change, Ken? Okay, camera guy can't heard it. It's a distinctly different sound. It's called the wall of air test. Okay, when the air changes, typically that translates to the premium spot in which your paint gun is atomizing the particles. After that point, they start to join together and become larger droplets. So your prime atomization, your tiniest particles, are going to be distributed beautifully on the finish, are at that wall of air. A man named Gary Laska showed me that technique, and Gary's brilliant. He's really good at troubleshooting too. He works with me on the paint education stuff, and the wall of air test works every time. That's where the sweet spot is. That's where I want to paint. So think about that. Well, don't paint your hand, but when you're setting your gun up, think about the wall of air test. So what we're going to talk about now is we're going to clean a gun. Now, Eastwood has just come out with something very cool. They call it Aerosol-Injected Cleaner. And you've got a couple of different components. I've seen a lot of guys over the years pull their guns apart and soak them in lacquer thinner. Last thing you want to do is introduce lacquer thinner into the rest of the fluid package. The only reason that you want thinner in your gun is to clean out where the paint goes. Now, on an HVLP gun, your paint goes from the cup down here and out there. There's this real estate right here that is seeing paint. The rest of this stuff, it's just a bit of overspray. And all you're worried about is cleaning out your fluid passages, your tip, your needle and seat, and your air cap. So, oh, we got a threaded issue here. Okay, there we go. That's back. This is a new gun right out of the packaging, and I didn't check it. But okay, so there we go. With the aerosol-injected cleaner, typically, what you end up doing is using cleanup thinner and pouring it through, but the aerosol-injected, look at that. I'm using a fraction of an ounce to clean this out. Now, it is a solvent. We don't want to expose our skin to solvents. You can use it to clean the overspray off the rest of the gun body. And it's a beautiful tool. I keep these next to my spray gun washer. I hardly ever use the spray gun washer anymore because I use the aerosol-injected cleaner. It's more environmentally friendly. We want to leave a cleaner earth than we started with, and this, believe it or not, it helps. And it's less expensive than getting 5-gallon buckets of cleanup thinner at a time. We still need that for just general maintenance, but this is a game changer right here. So again, well done, Eastwood, aerosol-injected cleaner. We like it. Now here's something that I wanted to show you as well. I call this percolating. we're going to use the air pressure gauge and get way down low. And again, we're talking about the fluid passages of your spray equipment, and that's all that needs cleaned, typically. Okay, we're going to set our pressure really, really low. Well, we're down here. I'm talking, it's not even registering on the gauge. Okay, it's not, typically I recommend about 10, 15 pounds at the inlet, but way down low like that. Now, thread your cap on to where it's barely hanging on. You can hear that sound. Let me show you what that sound means. This is just drinking water, so I don't need to wear safety glasses. But well, actually, in case you're watching this with the sound off, here's some safety glasses. Okay, look at that. It's not boiling, it's back feeding air pressure. Let's look at our gauge setting. About 6 pounds of pressure. Now what that's doing, I call it percolating. It's percolating all the fluid in the paint. You keep putting thinner in there, you percolate, you pour it out, put thinner in, percolate, pour it out, and pretty soon you're going to have a very clean spray gun to where all you have to do is wipe out the rest of the stuff. Now here's why you keep your air pressure low. Look at that. Not what you want. That's why you want to wear safety glasses. That ain't good. And when there's somebody else in the room, you can percolate yourself right into the emergency room. So be careful with this technique. One last thing I want to talk about is safety. You guys that have seen the Paint Education DVDs, you know that I'm big on safety. You got to be. I've known people in this industry that have ruined their careers by being silly, by not paying attention to the rules, thinking, well, just this one time I can spray that fender without a mask, just that one coat. Isocyanates are the main component in catalyzed hardeners. In the 2-component or 3-component system, isocyanate-based catalyst is what locks these 2 components together and makes this beautiful finish that modern paints have. Isocyanates are dangerous. It's one of the most dangerous neurotoxins known to man. I'm not kidding. And when you get isocyanate poisoning, it's like bee stings. It's dose-specific in your system, and it builds up over time. So you can get away with stuff for a while. Pretty soon, you're going to have a reaction. I've known people that this has happened to. They've had to change their careers. So please be aware. Gloves. Have some gloves. This mask is a charcoal filter negative pressure mask. Negative pressure meaning that you draw air in through these filters. They come with a pre-filter and a charcoal filter underneath. It is very effective, and OSHA even says that this is effective in filtering polyisocyanates. Now, the problem with this, I got the stylish goatee. I'm going to have a bit of trouble sealing against my face. If you have facial hair, not such a great idea. Here's the other thing. This comes sealed in a bag. Once you break that seal, you've got about 48 hours to where the charcoal is an active charcoal and is going to filter those poisons out. So you can buy this every 2 days, or you can have a fresh air system. Fresh supplied air, which is a positive system, this is available through the Eastwood catalog as well. This is the hobby air system. This goes in a remote location that you can get a clean air supply, away from the paint booth, away from your filters. There's enough hose where you can put this anywhere you want. It's a full mask. You get a constant supply of fresh air. It's a little bit to get used to, but at the same time, it doesn't take long at all. Yes, you're dragging another air hose around. Clip it to your belt. Get over it. It's the safest way to spray paint, and I highly recommend that. These are cost-effective, and by the time you go through a restoration, you've bought enough of these to probably justify buying one of those. I'm not saying don't get these. If you're in a pinch, pay attention to the rules. So that's pretty much what we were going to talk about today. And Nick's on the other end. I believe that he was going to filter some questions that some of you guys have been asking while this presentation is going on. So I'm waiting for a cue, Nick. Are you with me? Okay. Okay, the question was what nozzles, what fluid tips do I recommend with this equipment? Now, each procedure that you're doing kind of demands its own fluid tip. Your primers, especially your primer surfacers, want a larger orifice. The material is thicker, so you want a larger orifice. Now down into your top coats, the orifice shrinks. So it kind of goes like this. The general rule of thumb is that if you're using a primer sealer, which is like a ground coat before you paint, or if you're just covering up metal with an epoxy, a primer sealer, which is what I did on the ground coat of Jaded. We got it blasted, I used a primer sealer on top of it, and then we built everything else up on top of that. Primer sealer, you want a 1.6 or a 1.8 fluid tip. And this is a great question, by the way, because you think that you have to have multiple spray guns. You don't. Eastwood sells multiple tips for both the Evolution gun and the Concours gun, as do most spray gun manufacturers. So you're not in a pickle. You can just get a replacement fluid tip and needle seat. So down to primer surfacers, which are sanding primers. A surfacer means that you can sand it down. A primer surfacer, a good 2K, like a urethane primer surfacer, you're probably looking 1.6 to 1.8 fluid tip. Again, it's a fairly large orifice, but you want that material to flow out of the gun and flow out evenly onto your substrate or onto what you're priming. Now, here's the exception to that rule. When you're using poly surfacers, like, here, this is the Contour polyester surfacer. This stuff is beautiful. I rely on this heavily. This stuff is a pure polyester. It's got almost no solvents in it. It's like spray filler. It is in fact very, very thick. It's a very, very effective coating. It doesn't shrink. If you try and stack urethanes up on a panel and 16, 18 coats deep to get that super flat finish, it's going to shrink. It takes 90 days to cure. This stuff cures fast. There's almost no solvents in it. It's up in the 80% solids range. But here's the caveat. Here's the payoff for that. You have to have a giant orifice. I recommend a 2.0. As a matter of fact, when I layered up all those blocking sessions with Jaded, I used the Evolution gun and the 2.0 fluid tip in the Evolution gun. There's larger fluid tips, 2.3, 2.5. That works well as well. But I got by with it with the 2.0 and the Contour Poly. Now let's move on to top coats. Your base coats are dependent upon the metallic particles being allowed to do what they want to do with reducer selection, air pressure, but also with the fluid tip of the gun. Now, it's important more important rather when you have metallic colors to have a larger orifice, because those metallic particles want to stay in that happy little ball of paint and land on the surface and then just lay there naturally. You want them to naturally disperse like they want. So you got to have the large droplet size. So for metallic colors, a 1.4 fluid tip. Now, when you're solid colors, you can get by with the 1.3. I don't recommend a 1.2 because you want enough color in there to make sure you've got full saturation. And a 1.2 can be a little bit deceiving in the sense that you might think you've got it covered and hiding, but you may not. So I recommend a 1.4 for all base coats, typically. You can get by with a 1.3, but for me, that's the dividing line between color coats and clear coats. Keep this in mind as well. Your color coat serves absolutely no purpose other than coloring the car. There's no strength. You don't want a bunch of thickness, so you're not building it up. And it purely serves the purpose of changing the color of that vehicle. All your strength is in the clear coat, and you want that recommended thickness and very, very smooth. So let's talk about clear coats. I've gotten used to a 1.3 fluid tip on my clears. It's what feels good to me. It's what I'm able to paint with. I can rock and roll around a car with the 1.3. I've used a 1.2. The difference for me is that it slows down my gun speed. And just for me, I like to go a little bit faster and be in a little bit tighter. The 1.2 allows you to do that, and it's a good option. But I've had to troubleshoot guys that are using a 1.2, and they've ended up with a little bit of dry spray and maybe some uneven coverage. So what I recommend is a 1.3, but a 1.2 is a good option. So I hope that answers the question, Nick. That kind of runs the spectrum of fluid tip sizes. And again, the cool thing about these guns from Eastwood are that there's an inexpensive system that you can buy different fluid tips. It's just a matter of breaking it down, cleaning what you got, putting the new fluid tip in. You don't have to have 19 spray guns. You can have one spray gun and 18 other fluid tips. So, Nick, is there any other questions? Okay. The question is, do I have any suggestions for painters with mobility issues? For instance, a paraplegic in a wheelchair. And you might think that's uncommon. It's not as uncommon as you think. I've seen cars at car shows that this one Carlisle show I went to in particular, the guy wanted to show me his car, and he was in a chair, and we went out to the show field, and he showed me his car. It's a great paint job. And I asked him who painted it, and he said, well, I did. And I wasn't blown away because I didn't think he could do it in a chair. I was blown away because it was a beautiful paint job, and I was proud of this guy, and it was great. He did it. People that are challenged like that, there's ways to do it. Some of the spray gun techniques that I showed you, the different getting in your comfort zone, breaking your wrist possibly to where you could maybe lean down to the side and use that, well, use the position here. If I'm in a chair, forgive me, I mean no disrespect with this, I just want to demonstrate possibly being in the same elevation. You might have to maybe tilt to the side like this, get down, use that broken wrist position, and you can see right now that my spray gun is perfect. That's perfect technique right there. And as well as on here, I can get all the way out to the middle. I don't need to get past the middle because I use a push-pull method. So I'm in a chair and I can get here. The other thing that I would recommend to somebody that's in a chair that wants to do restoration type work is to become ambidextrous. Chances are you've already been put in the position where you've got to make one hand work as well as the other. So as a short guy and as a painter for years in production shops, I had to learn how to use this hand when this one got tired. So it's really served me well. When I get into an awkward position, now I can have good technique with my other hand. So I would say exercise the different hand positions in the spray gun. While your body can't necessarily move to those different positions, use your arms and use your other senses and create the situation that possibly your body can't do quite like someone else, and just use your wrists and learn those techniques. I think it'll serve you well. Nick, is there any other questions? That was a great question, by the way. The question is it best to paint your door jambs first and then come back and paint everything else? It's kind of like, do you like apples or tomatoes? There's ways to do everything. Personally, I don't like overspray lines. I don't like tape lines. I like to have a paint job without seams. When they paint these cars at the factory, I'm sure you guys have seen these videos of these body shells going down an assembly line with all the panels on them. And when you blow them apart, yes, you see a sealer, but you see paint around hinges and door handles and not door handles, but door hinges and things like that. So these cars are painted on the line with all the panels attached. A lot of times, door handles and all bumpers and things like that are put on later. They're painted at a different line. But that's a school of thought too. Very few paint booths can accommodate that. To have the hood and the trunk lid open, the doors wide open to where you can get inside all the recesses and all the areas. And you don't want to get into the situation to where you're having to open and close panels. So typically, for us weekend warriors, you got to do one first and then the other next, whether that's paint your jambs first or paint your body next, or paint your body first. I recommend, personally, if I'm going to do a paint job like that, typically I like to do the jambs first and then do a really nice job of masking and then come back, close my doors, make sure I'm all sealed up. And if I have to do a repair after that, if I get some overspray sneaking in, and you're going to get overspray sneaking in through some door gap somewhere, paint goes crazy places. It goes where you don't want it to go. So I'll come back and I'll color sand my edges, and if I have to spot in, I'll use a mini gun or some other type of a gun, or perhaps Eastwood's new 2K Aerospray, which has got a smaller spray pattern, and it's a beautiful product. I've used the clear coat. It's a nice small spray pattern, and it would allow me to do that paint repair over some overspray inside the door jamb on the latch pillar or inside maybe a trunk seam or something like that. So it's subjective. It depends what you want to do. I've seen guys paint the body and then come back and do the jambs. That's fine. You stand a greater risk of overspray on the rest of your panels doing it like that, but you have a lot more control like that as well. The other thing to consider is that a lot of us, we're going to cut and buff. We're going to color sand and buff the paint job anyway. So if you get a little bit of overspray, you're going to sand it off anyways. So it's honestly, work smarter, not harder. If you can think your way through it and find a way to do it, personally, I like to do the jambs first, then the body, then come back and do any repairs if necessary, but I've seen guys do it both ways. One more caveat to that. The ultimate thing for me is to paint the car. If I'm doing graphics down the side or graphics from the hood transitioning up onto the roof like Shelby stripes on a Mustang, what I will do a lot of times, and I did this with Jaded as well, I painted the body separately. I painted the whole car exploded. Now if I had a graphic down the side, I would block it out, I would lay my graphic out, I would do the base, I would clear, then I blow the car apart. And I backmask, and I know that my graphic is going to be correct, and I'll come back and I'll re-clear the car with it blown apart. So then I don't have any tape lines, I don't have any fuzzy overspray, and I get that dipped show car look that I want. It's twice as much work, it's twice as much masking, and it's more than twice as much paint that you use. However, you get the result that you want. You get that $1 million show car look. Nick, we got anything else? Okay, cool. The wall of air test, okay, the question was, is the wall of air test for clear coats as well? The wall of air test is for your spray gun. It's to test the optimum spot of atomization in that spray gun. So the wall of air test is not specific to coatings. It's specific to the way the fluid tip and the air pressure atomize the paint. So your wall of air test finds the sweet spot of your gun. Now what you put through it, that's up to you. Yes, I use the wall of air test. It tells me where my sweet spot is for clear coat as well. And it also tells me where the sweet spot is for base coats. Now, base coats are different. Sometimes you want to back off and slow the air pressure down. That's subjective. However, as a standard gun setup, it's good for all coatings, whether it's base coat, primer surfacer, or clear coats. So it's just a good all-around test to test your equipment. In painting classic motorcycle panels, or plastic motorcycle panels, what is the best way to lay them out? Is that right? Okay, cool. Now I've got this Captain Kirk Bluetooth thing in, so we're all high tech and stuff like that. So Ken, our videographer here, is he's a motorcycle guy, and I'm sure this question is near and dear to him too. What I recommend, as well as even pre-war cars, is that you build assembly bucks. You build bucks to where you can reach all the areas of the panel that you want and have access to spraying all those pieces in a comfortable manner. Here's the thing to think about with that. You want your panels mounted in exactly the same orientation as they mount on the vehicle. Now, if I have a gas filler lid that goes on a bedside of a truck and I lay it down on a bench top, yeah, it's easy to paint, but my paint's going to act differently on that. And when I put that filler cap back on the bedside, if it's a metallic color, there's a really, really strong chance you're going to have a color mismatch. So it's really important to spend the time, build wooden 2x4s and deck screws. You can make fixtures for your parts. Mount them in the same orientation as they sit on the bike, and you got a winning combination. And you're not going to have color mismatch. You're not going to have, if you hang your fairing or if you hang your tank, you've got a bottom part where the tank meets the seat that you got to stand on your head and turn yourself left-legged to get that bottom part of the tank. And chances are you're going to have either dry spray or incomplete color coverage. So with that tank mounted on a fixture, like it sits on the bike, you're going to get it and you're going to paint all the areas that you're going to see or that guy walking by at the car show is going to see. And it's a more proactive method to do it. It's more time investment, but it's a really, really good habit to get into. So that's a great question as well. Yes. Okay, this is a great question too. Do I have any tips for painting in Florida at 90 degrees? Okay, this is a very loaded question. This is an important question too. One of my best friends and one of the best painters that I've ever seen in my life, his name is Randy Borcherding, and he lives in Houston, Texas. Now, Houston's down by the coast. It's very humid there, and it's hotter than Tennessee. I'm in Tennessee, just south of Nashville, and we get really, really hot summers, 104, 105 degrees. Well, Randy in Houston, he's booking 114 degrees, and then it's a matter of the temperature in the booth and things like that. And I'm getting a notice that we've got just a couple minutes left on the tape here. So basically, what you do is you compensate with reducer. Every paint manufacturer has a slow reducer. What those reducers do is allow the paint to dry slower. It's a better tail solvent, which is what lasts longest and evaporates last. The trick to painting in high humidity, high temperature areas is to fool the air. Basically, if you would paint in the afternoon on a normal day in the spring or fall, you paint at 3 a.m., at 4 a.m. in the morning when the humidity is down, when the air temperature, the ambient air temperature is down, because it's not going to be 105 degrees at night. It's not going to be 90 degrees at night. It's probably going to be more 75, 80 degrees at night, and you've got a reducer on your shelf that will compensate for that temperature. So the biggest thing that I can tell guys that are painting in these different environments that are really, really hot, Florida, Texas, some parts of Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, in the summertime, adjust your sleep pattern. You know, get up a little earlier, and it also helps with insects. Insects are lazy. They don't want to get in the paint at 4 a.m. So you can fool the insects as well as fooling your temperature. So I think that's pretty much all we got time for, Nick. So I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for watching this streamcast. We've got some other really cool stuff coming in, but I wanted to say, give us some suggestions. Get on the Eastwood Restoration Forum and tell us what you want us to streamcast. We've got a great shop to do it. We've got great Eastwood equipment to do it with. We can show you whatever you want to see, as long as we keep our clothes on. So give us your feedback. We love that you guys are tuning into these. Thank you so much for paying attention. Thanks for your support with Paintucation, and thanks for being a part of the Eastwood world, because these guys really care about education. They care about the results that you guys are wanting to get, and as do I. So let us help. Let us know how to help you guys. So again, thanks. Good night. Thanks for tuning in, and watch for an email blast on the next one.